California Gov. Jerry Brown is an advocate, rather than a mediator, on whether California will merge its electrical grid with those of other western states not only physically but politically, allowing a new regional entity to decide who gets juice and who pays for it. Tanned, rested and presumably ready, the legislature reconvened this week for the inevitably hectic final weeks of its annual session. The pressure cooker atmosphere that always envelops the final days is, history tells us, not conducive to thoughtful policymaking. Preoccupied with pushing hundreds of their own pet bills through the Capitol's sausage factory, legislators pay too little attention to larger issues with potentially huge long-term impact on the state. Lobbyists for powerful interests thrive on the inattention, seeking measures that enrich their clients at the larger public's expense. Ad choice advertising and red invented by Teeds. That's how, in the dying moments of the 1996 session, the legislature passed, without a dissenting vote, a misnamed deregulation of the state's electrical power utilities. It promised to benefit consumers but wound up picking their pockets for many billions of dollars while driving one major utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, into bankruptcy and almost making another, Southern California Edison, insolvent. Get editorials, opinion columns, letters to the editor and more in your inbox weekday mornings. Sign up for the Opinion newsletter. 3 years later, in the last hours of the 1999 session, the legislature passed a measure granting state employees a very large retroactive increase in their retirement benefits on assurances that it would cost nothing because the California Public Employees Retirement System could easily cover the higher pensions with investment earnings. Local governments largely followed suit, but after CalPERS lost $100 billion in the recession a decade later, both they and the state were hammered by sharply increasing demands for mandatory contributions to cover the losses and pay the enhanced pensions. Much like the electric power debacle, the expedient pension grab is costing Californians tens of billions of dollars. This trip down memory lane cautions us that Californians should be leery of two big issues, both dealing with electric power, that could be decided this month. One is the plea by PG. Without relief, they say, they can be driven into insolvency and their pleas are being backed by their employee unions and Wall Street banking and investment houses which have huge stakes in keeping the utilities financially healthy. Wildfire victims, their insurers and attorneys who specialize in personal injury cases, the latter two the strangest of political bedfellows, want to keep inverse condemnation laws in effect as vehicles to gain compensation. Jerry Brown, for whom this legislative session is the last of his career, is trying to work out a compromise, but with moneyed interests on both sides, it's a tough slog. Brown is an advocate, rather than a mediator, on the second issue, whether California will merge its electrical grid with those of other western states not only physically but politically, allowing a new regional entity to decide who gets juice and who pays for it. Brown's advocacy is apparently driven by assumptions that a regional grid would make it easier for California to peddle its surplus renewable power, and also provide backup power so the state can wean itself from carbon-emitting coal and natural gas generation. However, there's stubborn resistance from some environmentalists, who worry aloud about the state's losing its political accountability for power system operations. Not surprisingly, they compare the regional plan to that disastrous 1996 deregulation scheme as an example of what happens when big decisions are made at the last minute. They've got a very strong point. 80 Quality Auto 360p 720p 1080p. You might also like when cancer strikes, the cost often goes beyond. Prudential Insurance Singapore 1 o'clock. How Toshiba can help us build a better world. Toshiba APAC Johor are seeking treatment in Singapore. Visits, Straits Times St. Now, news as it happens, July 25, 2018. Straits Times Green Card USA. Check if you are eligible to apply. U.S. Green Card, free check, free live training workshop, how Singaporeans make Ace Pro Academy miss manners, I'm feeling humiliated and guilty about. MercuryNews.com Proud Boys, who they are, and why experts who study. MercuryNews.com Surprise. Mega Millions winners take the day off work. MercuryNews.com. Howard Stern character died of heroin overdose. TMZ says Betsy DeVos family, $40 million yacht untied and sent adrift. More mixed marriages in Singapore amid rise in Muslim converts. Premium content luxury shoppers love the privileges of the HSBC Visa Infinite Card. HSBC Bank finally. Financial planning. Your life, your way. Finally, Justin Bieber reportedly breaks with celebrity pastor, who doesn't sound happy about Hailey Baldwin. California fires. See how smoke is spreading across the West China waterfall. Skyscraper hit by torrent of ridicule. Business Times find the best VPN in Singapore. Trusted review. Enjoy. Compare how to see extraordinary animals on the brink of extinction. Far and wide. East Bay man who posted drugs, guns for sale on Instagram sentenced to federal prison. Map of California's top 10 fires. Mendocino complex becomes largest ever.